Hi there, it's Craig here. This is a CraigTalk video. I have a topic I want to cover today, and it has to do with kind of the paranormal. This is a really interesting topic. We're all wondering about it. It's something that everybody wonders about. Nobody really knows, but I have a friend who's a guest today on this video, who goes by the name of Merddyn 2002, but he has given me permission to use his first name, which is James. And drum roll, please. This is James. How you doing, bud?
Hey, man. What's going on?
Not much. James has some experience in this field, which he will tell you about. We just want to sort of open the door to this topic, and with James's experience in this, I think we may be able to do that. But first, I have to, before we get into the topic, this is an inmate brew. It's made from apple juice and yeast, and I threw some sugar in and some yeast nutrient. And I've done some videos on inmate brew, but what we have to really realize is that James is actually the guy who showed me how to do it. So he's the originator. He's not the originator of this kind of brew, but he's the guy I first saw do it on YouTube. So no, he was never in jail doing it in the backs of toilets. But
I did learn from inmates.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about that before we get on to our main topic.
I used to be a guard for a prison here in Texas, and had many a conversation with many an inmate about how they made their stuff, and that's kind of how I got started in the whole brewing thing, and realized one day after I'd left the prison system, hey, I'd never tried it when I was a guard, but some of it smelled pretty good, so I figured I'd give it a shot, and hey, it worked.
It does work. Remember the very first one I did was one that you showed us how to do out of the apple cider, and I still remember that. That was really, really cool. So in honor of you and your efforts to show us how to do that, cheers.
Oh, cool. Unfortunately, I'm just drinking Sprite.
Oh, that's okay. Ooh. Now, I haven't tasted this yet, so this is, wow. Okay, we better take it easy on that. It's got about 10% alcohol. It's actually quite good. It's very good. Very good. But I'll talk about that in another video. So, can you give us a little quick background on what enabled you to experience this field? Did you work in the field, or was it you were part of a group, or?
I went to some sort of social mixer and met a guy and his wife several years back now. They were talking about something amongst themselves that I'd never heard of before, ghost hunting and all that fun stuff. And I kind of looked at them strange because I'd never heard of it before. So I sat and talked to the guy for about 30 minutes. He was actually a medium, a psychic medium. He can see and talk to spirits himself, him and his wife both. And it was just sort of incredulous to me, and I really didn't believe the guy, and started going out with him and his wife on little events, and we at some point started up a little group and got quite a bit of experience from that group, and now we run a separate group from a website, HoustonGhost.com. We mainly just cater to special needs cases, people who have what we would classify as severe or traumatic hauntings, or they're just not handling the situation appropriately. So we step in. Our clients come to us, sort of situation.
So in other words, you're in this field because there are real things going on. People are having trouble with hauntings and things like that.
Oh yeah, that's the understatement of the year, man.
Okay.
We don't get involved in a case unless we feel somebody is emotionally or physically in danger, and if we think somebody's faking it, or you have even an inclination that something's not legit, we don't even get involved because we just don't have the time to mess with it.
Oh, so in other words, you can testify that some of these things are actually real, that people aren't just crazy, and that things are actually happening then.
Well, things happen every day. I mean, what are you talking about? Things in specific? I mean, I'm not trying to split hairs, but
Well,
the ghosts are real. Yeah, absolutely.
okay. I have never had any personal experiences with that kind of thing, with ghosts or anything like that. There's been some questionable activity around the house here, but I still don't know why it's been going on. But my wife has had experiences, which we can talk about a little later, and other people I know have had experiences too. Maybe we can get into those a little bit later. You talk about on your videos about the body being a vehicle or a meat sack, basically, for the soul. Can you just, I mean, we haven't gone into the nuts and bolts of this yet, and sort of the evidence, but can you just elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the fundamental principles, and it's sort of a universal truth for me. And it's one of the, if I had a dogma, it would be one of the dogmas or central principles I would teach. Would be that you are not your meat sack. You are not the body that you inhabit. You are the thing, the spirit controlling it. I've actually written a couple of essays on the topic in general, like if you are not your body, then what is your brain? What's the function of your brain? Stuff like that, based on my experience and my research into this field. From the principle of, if ghosts can think and they have memories, and they don't have bodies, if they don't have the meat there, what does that tell us about the function of our biological brain? That's not where thinking occurs. That's how the spirit connects to the body.
Right. Okay, I think I better back up a little bit, because what we need to do is try to get people on board a little bit in believing that there's such thing as a spirit before we start talking about how this all works. These are all pop questions. James and I haven't rehearsed this at all, so there might be some awkward moments. Is there anything to top it up, like to start off here? Is there anything that you can tell us that would allow us to believe that this is real, that what you're saying is actually in fact true, that there is a spirit world? Is there an experience you've had, or like how can you in the first few minutes here, how can you get people thinking, oh really, oh well, and make them want to watch the rest of the video, and it's just not, oh turn it off, I don't believe it? How can we convince them right off the top here that we're not talking about crap here?
I honestly don't know if I can convince anybody, but I can tell you that I honestly, if you're as much of a skeptic as I was getting involved in this stuff initially, I don't think there's anything I could say or do in a video that would convince you one way or another. The only way I got convinced was to actually go out in the field myself and have my own firsthand experiences. And I really encourage anybody who really wants to see what this stuff is all about to go out and do that, do it responsibly. And I know it's hard to quantify what responsible is in a short video, but make sure you're respectful in who and what you're dealing with. And it's the whole concept of don't call forth that which you can't put down, because that whole concept of ghosts can't hurt you, well, that's a load of BS. They can hurt you really, really bad if they want to. So the salvation there is that most of them don't. Most of the people that you meet on the street every day are generally pretty good people. They wouldn't hurt you unless you give them a real reason to. So ghosts are the same way. They generally don't have a whole lot of malice involved. It's the ones that are really active are the ones that are dangerous that my group is concerned about. So
okay, so there you are. You've had some firsthand experience. You've told me some stories in the past.
Yeah.
You've
Absolutely.
had some firsthand experience with these things. So it's a first-person experience. It's not coming from someone you know. This is coming from you. Now, I've known James for over almost 4 years now, and I can tell you that he has absolutely no reason to make this stuff up. And I would not want him to, because I'm still a bit of a skeptic myself. I'm not trying to seek a fake answer here. I want the truth. and this is why I have him on here. Is there a particular experience that you've had yourself that you can tell us about that would allow people to believe that you have actually had an experience?
Well, as far as stuff I've seen myself and experienced, I've been touched, poked, growled at by thin air, seen flashes of light out of thin air, gotten some really amazing EVP.
Okay, well, what is that, just briefly?
Oh, EVP is electronic voice phenomenon. It's by some method of mechanics or nature or science or magic, we don't know. Voices of spirits are somehow allowed to be recorded on audio media, on recording devices. And that goes all the way back to Edison, who invented the audio recorder. His original design was designed to be able to talk to and communicate with the dead, and he used that device to do that. The original phonograph, or whatever it was called, was for that. So that's the roots of EVP, and I have been very, very fortunate to capture some of the best EVP I've ever heard, ever. It's available on our website.
So, and I've heard these recordings, and especially there's a particular one in a kitchen. Was it a restaurant, hotel?
Yeah, it was a restaurant here in downtown Houston, Magnolia Ballroom.
I listened to the recordings, and there's definitely something going on there. And you were there when these recordings were made, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I was there. It was my recorder they were recorded on. It was just one of those little bitty $20 setups from Walmart, a micro cassette recorder with the little line-in lapel mic that came with it. I've still got the tape floating around here somewhere, but yeah, I mean, it if you listen to the audio clip, somebody participates in the conversation, that wasn't there. You can clearly hear somebody say no on the tape. There's some anomalous audio feedback on another part of the recording, and at one point, it's pretty funny. You can hear these voices chanting in the background. It's some Native American chanting.
Okay, for the record, he waits, it was not me. When they come to sue, Merddyn.
I heard that.
Yeah, at some point in the recording, it actually gets so loud on the tape that it almost drowns us out. But it didn't happen in the room, We didn't. There weren't a bunch of Indians dancing around in the room that we saw. We probably would have noticed that.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that there were more than one recorders running. There was more than one microphone and more than one recording device. Is that right? And
it was on two separate sides of the room. They both recorded the same thing.
Same little bit of feedback, same voices, same chanting, and all that stuff, and the same word no.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there we can rule out, an electronic anomaly in one of the recorders. And so now here we're starting to get really down into, like, you can't logically explain this unless you start thinking that there's something else going on here, right? Yeah.
I actually sent a clip of the audio to a professor at a university somewhere in the middle of the U.S., like Utah or something like that, because they were supposedly an expert in Native American languages, and they confirmed that the chanting was some sort of Native American language, but they couldn't quite figure out because of the quality what it was, but it certainly sounded like some sort of chanting ritual. And the background, as I understand it from my little research on the area, that area was populated by a Native American tribe at some point in its past. So interesting. So the pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together there. So you also talked about another experience you had, one of the first experiences you had, where you were walking through. Now, it was a long time ago when you told me this story,
You were walking through it was a building or whatever. It was dark, and you were a skeptic at the time, right? And so you decided to go in and check this out, kind of humor this situation. And what ended up happening is that you had a growling sort of a voice in your face in the dark. And you can you explain that story a little bit?
Sure. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, just to clarify, I still consider myself kind of a skeptic, because I always approach every situation from, you have to assume it's not supernatural in nature. You know, the first thing I talked to you about in your situation was, have you had a professional come out and check it?
Yeah.
You always assume it's not supernatural. And
right.
When you eliminate all the mundane possibilities, that's when you start looking at alternative theories. But that was, ironically, it was one of the very first times I went out. We had gone to the couple I had met at this little social mixer thing. Had invited my girlfriend and I out to a ghost hunt at a church, and it was one of the older churches here in Houston. I think one of the St. Peter's Church on the southwest side, somewhere over in that area. They have a cemetery like directly behind the church that's attached to it. So we went over there and we walked around, didn't really see anything. On our way back, though, to exit the cemetery area, I don't want to get into too much detail, but my girlfriend was doing something she shouldn't have been doing, and it wasn't sexual at all or depraved or anything like that. She was doing something that I would consider offensive on church property. Mm-hmm. Not illegal or anything, but right when she did that, like the very instant she did that, and I didn't even realize that's what she was doing at the time, there was this bright, blinding flash of light that almost knocked me over, and I'm a pretty big guy, so that says something in and of itself. But I managed to catch myself on the wall on my way down, and at the same time, where that flash of light blinded both of us, there was this loud, immense growl from somewhere in front of us. I couldn't quite place it. So we sort of were both dazed for a few seconds and just looked at each other like, did you just hear that? Did you just see that, sort of thing? And we both went, yeah, I think it's time to get out of here. So we both started making
that would be a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the plan, is to go home at a rapid pace.
Wow.
We started making a beeline for the car, and it was really funny. I was putting our equipment in the trunk of the car, and I slammed the car down, and I just for a split second I thought, no, I couldn't have just, that's my imagination playing around with me. I couldn't have just seen and heard what I just saw and heard. I'm going to go back in there just to prove to myself so, I can sleep at night. And right about like 2.5 heartbeats after I said that, there was this loud booming growl coming from the same hallway in the church that happened from, and I decided, you know what, I'm not going to go back in there. I'm just going to go home.
Wow. So. I remember that story. That was one of the things you told me probably maybe a couple years ago that stuck with me. Let's just talk for a minute about some of the things that that I've heard about. Now, again, I've never experienced anything personally that I know of. Little things have happened around here, and I guess there's always logical explanations for them, or maybe not. I won't go into complete detail, but there's been some plumbing issues where taps have been turning off in the middle of dishwasher cycles. Things have fallen off of places where I don't see how they could have fallen off of places. And the washing machine has done some pretty unexplainable things whenever I put the clothes in, not when my wife does. And I guess what we should do is just mention that in 2005, I lost my dad to cancer. And I think you're one of the first people I talk to after I got over the initial shock, when I started wondering about, I wonder if my dad is still around, and it would be really nice to think that he was.
Yeah,
well,
I
one of the
remember
things that happened, pardon?
I remember that conversation.
Yeah, and you really reassured me that he was. I told you a story about my wife, and this was a few days after he died. This is before the funeral. That my wife was sleeping upstairs, and I was down here doing whatever I do down here with my YouTube and all that. And she woke up, and she saw a dark figure beside the bed, a human-shaped figure beside the bed. It was black. The room was not completely dark, but she did see this black figure which blocked anything behind it. And she immediately felt utter peace, love, calmness, and she knew in her heart, she says she knew it was my dad.
Right.
Okay? And she told me this the next day. And I kind of thought, well, geez, it would be nice if it was him. But, how do you know you weren't dreaming? And this, and she said, I wasn't dreaming, and I think you can agree with me that when we're dreaming, we don't know we're dreaming, but when we're awake, we know we're awake, and she knows
Sure.
that she was awake during this part.
Depends on what drugs you're on, but yeah, generally.
Well, she wasn't on any.
Right.
And my wife was the biggest skeptic in the world. She'd never believed any of this stuff. My son Stephen used to come over and talk about things that he saw in the house after his grandfather died, footprints being impressed into the carpet, stuff moving around. And he used to come over and tell us these stories, and my wife would say, "Oh, Stephen, come on. You're just imagining these things, Well, when she saw this thing upstairs, she was a convert immediately. And so I kind of thought, well, okay, I'd like to tell my family, No, she said, I don't want, I don't want this to be discussed. This is personal between you and
Right.
and I don't want anyone else to know because they're going to think stuff. So we agreed on that, and I honored her decision. A few weeks later, she saw the same thing again. And now I'm up most of the night, so I wasn't there when she saw this thing both times. She saw it again in the exact same location in the room. Actually, she said it was a couple inches over from where it was last time. And she said she saw the same thing, and this time she felt the same feelings, that it was Dave, my father, and that he was telling her that everything was okay. And she reached out to try and touch the thing, and it disappeared.
Right.
Okay, so when she told me this the next day, I said, look, I need to tell my family this. They're going to want to know this. And she said, no, I don't want anyone to know. And I said, look, and I told her this. I said, my dad and I were driving along one day. He was taking me somewhere. And out of the blue, he just said, so how's Nona doing? That's my wife's name, Winona. And I said, fine, she's fine. He said, you know what? Don't ever lose her, because we need her. And I said, okay, I'll try.
Right.
Well, when I told my wife this, she immediately said, okay, yes, you have to tell your family. That's what he wants. He needed to get through to her to tell me so that I could tell my family that he was somewhere and he was happy. And so I proceeded to tell them, and it never happened again. What do you have to say about those things? Are called shadow figures. Do you have any information about that, or what do you know about that?
I can tell you visits from folks who are recently departed to their loved ones are very, very common. If I were to hazard a guess, it would be probably by far the most common experience I've ever heard about, reported. The one thing I like to bring up when somebody brings up shadow people is a lot of folks tend to prematurely judge any encounter with shadow people or anybody who appears to be dark or shadowy as evil or malicious or something along those lines. And it's very, very important that while you should always maintain your guard around spirits because you never know if they're going to be good or bad, it's very easy to to assume something that looks like it would be evil or negative in Hollywood is evil or negative, and that's usually 9 out of 10 times that is not the case. They're just there hanging out.
What do you think is happening there when somebody dies? And I mean, none of us are really. I mean, unless you've died before, you can't really say for sure. But what is happening there when your body expires? What do you presume is going on, and why are these things hanging around, and where are they?
Well, okay. Again, it sort of goes down to the central principle that we were talking about. Is you're not your meat sack. You're still looking at it from the perspective of when you die, you have to switch perspectives and realize that your natural state is not living as we know it. Your natural state is actually as a spirit. That's probably where we spend most of our time. So I don't tend to think about the equation from what happens when we die. Mm-hmm. I tend to think of it from the perspective of, isn't it unusual that we chose to live again? Mm. So, okay. I don't know if does that answer your question?
Well, it kind of does. That means that instead of looking at the presence of the spirits as the weird part, you're actually saying we should be looking at the living part as the weird part and the spiritual part as the normal part. Is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, no, we are the anomaly. And in fact, if you go back and you look at a lot of the channeled information from reputable mediums who have been proven credible over and over again, to anyone with any means of common sense, the one message they generally bring forth is that we're the ones that are dead, so to speak, because we're cut off from our spiritual form. Mm-hmm. We have a very limited field of view because we're not in our natural state, which is pure spirit. So
it's my belief that, and I have videos about this, that the universe was created by a similar entity or entities, or perhaps a grand entity, a grand consciousness. And I'm not necessarily talking about,
God,
a biblical God or anything like that, although I'm not ruling that out. But I think that, barring any religious discussion here, I think that there is a supreme, all-knowing, all-seeing, all-encompassing being that created the universe in order to live these little rides, as I call them. Does that your impression as well?
Yeah, that's absolutely my impression. And as I understand it, a lot of Native American belief systems revolve around that as well. And not just those, there are other belief systems out there that believe that too. But yeah, we're all shards or embers out of some, higher intelligence, greater power, light, the great pudding in the sky, whatever you want to call it.
Right. I think it's interesting to to realize, for me anyways, and it gives me a really good feeling, and it makes it a lot easier for me to believe this thing, that concept we just discussed, because before I even knew you, and at some point I just basically sat down here by myself and just thought about it for a long time. And before I spoke to you, or before I started looking it up on YouTube or anything, I basically felt in my heart that was the case, that there was a grand consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, or collective consciousness, whatever, that created the universe for this purpose. And when I came up with that, I started noticing after that that other people believe the same thing. And I find it funny that we have collectively come up with this conclusion independent of each other, which to me basically says that there's some truth to that, and maybe some of us are meant to know this stuff, or it's leaked from a previous life, or it's been brought over. Now, you touched earlier on the ability for a spirit to remember stuff without the physical brain. If you want, you can go further with that now. I think it's time.
Sure. Well, The concept is very, very simple in our experience in our group. It's very apparent that ghosts, spirits, disincarnate entities, whatever you want to call them, they can think and they can reason. They have logic. They have the same, for the most part, mental facilities or capacity that they had when they were alive.
And
sometimes
of course, the argument to that is that how can that be? They don't have a brain.
Right. Yeah.
And what we have to do is break the thought that the brain is fully responsible for our consciousness. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, and I think we would actually make a lot of breakthroughs in how we see the brain and the relationship between our emotional state and memory recall and mental health, mental illness in general, if we could have a greater understanding of that relationship. The problem is it's very difficult to apply the scientific method to spiritual research because it's not easily reproduced in laboratories. So yeah, it's difficult for medical science today and medical technology to make that leap and come out and declare that the relationship as we understand it between the brain and memory and thought is not what we thought it was. It's somehow different.
Right.
I'll touch on something real quick too at this point. Something that really propelled my understanding of the brain and thought and the universe in general was a book I read relatively recently called The Holographic Universe. It really jacked my head up. It took me a while to really wrap my mind around those concepts, but now that I have a much better perspective on how this stuff operates and the mechanics therein.
So when you say a holographic universe, I think I know sort of what you mean. I haven't read the book, but can you elaborate on sort of briefly what that kind of means, the holographic universe? I mean, I know it's a book, but...
Yeah, essentially it's a metaphor for the universe being a hologram. Like it's not really real. There's no substance there. The idea and the principle is, though they don't really come out and say it in this language, but the principle is that the spirit is real, and the spirit is the film per se in the universe, and that's the reality. And everything we see and everything we interact with, our physical bodies and the universe as we know it, is a projection of light through that film, and that's what we experience. That's what we live in. But the ultimate reality is the holographic film in and of itself. That's a very simplified explanation, and they get into it much, much deeper in the book. But that's the premise of it: is the physical reality is not real, the spirit is real, and all manifestations of physical reality and even time are manifestations from the realm of spirit. And they call it implicit and explicit reality in the book, but that's really essentially what they're talking about, to put it in layman's terms.
So when you say film, do you mean like fabric?
Essentially, yeah, you could call it fabric.
Okay.
It's carrying the holographic analogy further. In order for a hologram to be real or projected, there has to be a holographic film.
I've gone in a little bit into some of the stuff in a few of my videos about how we see the universe through our eyes, and that there's this electromagnetic spectrum that contains radio waves and microwaves and gamma rays and different frequencies of electromagnetism, including the small portion of that spectrum, which we call light, because we can actually detect it with the organs in our heads, the eyes. It doesn't mean that spectrum, that part of the spectrum, is really any different than any other part. It's just the one that we use to see, quote unquote, to see things. And what I've often wondered is, what would it be like to see the universe the way it really is without seeing it through the limited means that we see it through, which is basically electromagnetism bouncing off of matter. and taking into account that matter is not even solid, that atoms are spaced apart and they never touch, so everything is actually transparent. And I even go in a little bit into the fact that if our eyes were tuned to a lower frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum, because of the way electromagnetism behaves at different frequencies, that we would actually be able to see through things, because at lower frequencies it goes through matter instead of bouncing off the way light does. So
Right.
the way we see with our eyes is not the way the universe really is, it's just the way we perceive it. Would you agree with that?
Completely, and actually the verbatim almost what you're talking about was discussed at length in that book, and because you brought it up with that and you described it like that, I think I just made an internal decision. When we get off the video at some point, I want you to email me your address, and I'm going to mail you my copy of the book, because you're at that level where you really have to read it. It's going to jumpstart your for lack of a better term, your spiritual evolution.
Oh,
If you're touching on those ideas already, you're ready for the book.
absolutely. I would really appreciate that. That'd be great. Suppose we haven't convinced people yet during this talk. What can you say as a person, just personally, you, and you being the type of person that I know you are? Let's suppose everybody watching this has a way of knowing that you are an honest guy, that you wouldn't lie about this kind of thing.
Sure.
I know this, and so they'd have to have some faith in the two of us. What can you say to these people who trust you, or to me who trusts you, personally? What can you say to me to tell me that this is real, that the spirits are real? How do you know? Why do you believe it? Is there a bottom line here? Is there some magic words? I know I'm hitting you with a difficult question, but go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. The bottom line is, it doesn't matter if you believe or you don't believe. It's real. So it's that whole. It doesn't matter if you believe in God. God believes in you. The fact that you don't believe in me, or you don't believe in the spirit world, doesn't change the fact that it's there. If anybody watching this video were to get one central concept from anything they hear from me or from anybody else, it would be I would want them to understand that if something is scaring you, or if you're in a haunting and you believe you may be in danger, or somebody may be in danger, don't ignore that, because that's the worst thing you can do on the face of the planet. I kind of hate to point to this, but it's sort of almost a crusade of mine. There was a movie out recently, and I don't know if you've seen it, called Paranormal Activity. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Okay. That I've never encountered anything to that degree where somebody got killed. But that movie, even though it was false, was as close to the warning I would like to give somebody to really watch out for, man, because there are bad nasties out there that will jack you up if they can. When my daughter comes to me and she tells me, she hears voices in the middle of the night calling her name because she's a little bit psychic, I take that seriously. I don't dismiss it, and I give her instruction on what she's supposed to do and what she's supposed to tell these spirits to leave her alone, because that's not something you want to jack with. If they get upset or they have it in their heart to hurt you, they can.
Okay. And why do you think that they would want to do that?
Man, if I knew that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not trying to sound alarmist.
No.
But there's a very, very small percentage of spirits out there that will interact with you, or that you could perceive, that would ever want to do anybody harm. But it's those few, rare and far between spirits that do mean you harm, and especially the ones that come off all innocent and just trying to be cutesy. that really have it in for you. Those are the ones you want to watch out for. Yeah. So.
At this point, I like to encourage anybody who's still with us and hasn't clicked off of this by now, and if you're still kind of leery about it or tipsy about it, kind of on the fence, there's a radio show called Coast to Coast AM. You can find it on YouTube. It's just audio, but you can, and they have several programs about this. There's all kinds of information about this. This is something that's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and in our society today, it's been around since anyone can remember. This is something that's not going away. It is not a hoax. It is not a conspiracy theory that just gets swept under the rug.
Right.
It's there. It's been there for many, 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 many years. And the fact that it's not going away, that people still today, despite the dramatization and the movies that have been made about it, and the sort of the fiction that surrounds this topic, despite all that, people are still coming out with their stories of what they've seen and experienced. And I think it's time that we stop saying, no, it's just a coincidence. Oh, you were imagining it. Oh, you were hallucinating. Oh, you were asleep. I think it's time to stop that nonsense and really consider the fact that this is real. Just because we're taught in society by, the way things are, we're taught that this is a three-dimensional, rigid universe. Here we are, we're physical beings. Here's my desk, here's my table, there's that thing over there, and this is all there is. It's basically what we're taught, unless you go to some church, which basically will tell you, no, this is the way it is. There is a spiritual world, but in that context, I think there's some limitations as to how those people can believe about the spirits based on their literature. They have to believe it in a certain way because that's what their religion tells them, and that's perfectly fine. But I think, again, the denial needs to stop. The excuses need to stop that it's a coincidence or it's some, the wind or whatever. Buck up, face up to it. It is real. And I now, this has been I don't know how long this video has been so far, but in this short time, I'm a lot more convinced now than I was even at the beginning that there's a hell of a lot more to this universe than what these little piss holes in the snow can detect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned Coast to Coast. I've listened to that show off and on for the last couple of years. There's one guest in particular on there that I would point anybody who's interested in this topic to, Father Malachi Martin. If you've ever listened to any of the programs or recordings with him on it, he was a former, what's the word for it, exorcist with the Roman Catholic Church, and he has a series of interviews with Art Bell, and man, I have never heard anybody else, based on my own independent, unique experience, that has this stuff figured out better than that guy. He knows what he's talking about. He really does.
Is there, I think we've gone through as much as we can. Is there anything else that you have, or have we pretty much at least got people interested that perhaps were skeptics before? What do you think, James?
I'm still a believer in that. I don't think there's anything we can say or do that can convince anybody that this stuff is real. And honestly, that's not my priority anyway. My priority is helping those people who don't need to be convinced because they're so freaked out at whatever they're dealing with in their house or their life that they're beyond convincing. They're ready for the whole thing to stop.
Right.
So that's sort of my focus. I'll mention a couple other things. I don't talk about this a whole lot. I'm sure folks are going to go look for my YouTube channel based off this video. I don't talk about this a whole lot on my channel because I don't know why. I guess I have to be prompted or ask questions. I'm happy to make videos or do another one of these would be great because I love the back and forth. Mm-hmm. Anybody can send me any questions they want. But please don't go to our Houston Ghost website and submit a request for assistance if you're outside of the Houston area, because we're so we get so many contacts in Houston already that we can't schedule to deal with. So unfortunately, if you live in Panama or Florida or Georgia or something like that, there's not a whole lot we can do for you. But I would recommend, if you're in that situation and you need some outside assistance because something's disturbing, go on Google and find a group in your area and quiz them, ask them, how they operate. And you can get those questions from our website. Ask them, do they charge? No group worth their salt that's going to actually come out and help you should charge for anything at all. And they should state very clearly what they expect from you and what you should be able to expect from them, and vice versa. So that's very important. Make sure the people you call in to help seem to be at least relatively knowledgeable and qualified to be able to help. Because one of the things I see a lot in this field is groups want to get their feet wet, and they want cases, and they want to be able to get experience to see if this stuff is real or not. And what happens is they go in to help a family, and they don't know how to deal with the situation once it's all stirred up. So they just sort of run away and go off on their own and leave the family there to deal with a pot that's been stirred. So the family's even worse off than they were originally.
I see.
So.
Okay. Good advice. And the very fact that you're saying that you're being inundated in your area with requests, either there's a lot of, it's my opinion that either there's a lot of hallucinations going on or a lot of crazy people in your town, or this is really happening and these people really are calling upon you for help to solve their
Man, I'll tell you straight up, people may tell you to your face that they don't believe, but most people I have talked to have some story in their past where they simply can't deny it, or they've had some experience where they can't stick their head in the sand. They just choose to ignore it. So they may be making fun of you, but that are casting aspersions or doubts, but that doesn't mean that they haven't seen it for themselves and they're just not ready to face the music. You know what I mean? Right.
I do. Well, Merddyn, 2002. James, thank you very much for this. I hope this is an interesting video. We'll find out when it's posted from the feedback, and maybe there'll be more discussions in the future of other topics. But this one was very interesting. I appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Absolutely. If anybody wants to send you questions or anything, I'm happy to get on and do another one, and we'll talk if this gets well received.
Okay. And right with that, I have a Cooper's Lager from the keg. This thing tastes absolutely amazing. Just for all you home brewers that might be watching this, we should always include the beer in these videos.
Absolutely. You're making me jealous, man. I got to go get ingredients and start another batch.
Yeah, James has done some beer and brewing. He's a wine brewer, and he has helped me a lot in some of the areas of brewing. I've had questions for him. I've had inmate brews fail on me, and call up old Merddyn, and he just says, "Well, you got to try this and that." And lo and behold, I've got this stuff down pat, man. This is great stuff. And you can light a barbecue with this one, I'll tell you right now. Anyway, thanks, man. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.
Later.
Hey, guys. Thanks for watching. This is something I just did, sort of new, this kind of a video, and I really would like to hear from you whether this is something that you would like me to do more often. I like to do CraigTalk videos where I sit and talk about stuff, but it's nice to have somebody else there that we can talk with. So if this is the kind of thing you would like to see me do more of, then please let me know. You'll have to excuse me. I have some sort of an allergy thing going on right now. But yeah, give me feedback. Let me know what you think. I'd like to talk about lots of things. I'm a very open-minded person. If you have a topic that you'd like me to cover, let me know. If you know somebody who's an expert at something that you think would be interesting to talk about, let me know. I'll see if I can get in touch with that person and we'll do an interview. If you yourself have something that you'd like to talk about that you think would be interesting for the viewers of CraigTube, then get in touch with me and we'll make arrangements to talk about it, and perhaps we'll do a video on it. So, hey, if you're, okay with being on camera and talking on YouTube, then hey, I'm fine with it myself. But all I want is your feedback. Let me know what you think, and if you think this is something that you would want me to do more of. That's what I really want to know. Well, I appreciate your support and appreciate you watching. Take care. Cheers. And we'll see you next time. Bye. Here we go.
What beer was that?
Oh, I was just about to say, hi there, it's Craig here.